Hello, my name is Zoe Hodge, and I've just co-authored a book called A Guide to New Political Movements with Nick Silver in the front there at the think tank Radix. We seem to quite like expressing our opinions on lots of topics. It's a pretty good illustration for what A Guide to New Political Movements is actually about. In this book, we've studied a range of recently formed political parties abroad and tried to sort of piece out their characteristics. Insurgent parties are born on the internet and they stay relevant there. Italy's five-star movement expanded on meetup.com, whilst Salvini, leader of the La Liga, which has been on the news quite a lot in the last couple of days, he's a prolific user of Snapchat. These new parties are listening to people not every 5 years, but every minute. Hashtags, comments, data are all analysed and the message is made to suit. I mean, new parties are using social media to create a sort of two-way dialogue between politician and supporter, because they know in the age of instant messaging, we can and we want to reach politicians directly and whenever. On the flip side, of course, parties are able to directly reach us. If you're consuming Instagram stories from only one party and not reading or listening to any other source of opinion, plus they know exactly what you like to be told. This modern technology, it's creating the possibility of collapsing the distance between us and power, not just if you run into Rory Stewart in the coffee line. We need to set the balance, though, in favour of us. What is clear is that those who've understood both social technology and social demands will have a better chance at influencing our future.
I wanted to basically talk about my experiences of trying to establish what could have been, and I think might still be, an embryonic, I referred to it in one grueling question session with Kay Burley as a small acorn which might grow into a big tree, over the last few months. And the nature of our political system in this country, and that's why the new movements which are set out so well in this book are not directly parallel, makes it extremely difficult for anybody to try and set up something new. We had to register the party to the Electoral Commission. The time was very short. It was almost impossible to meet the deadlines of the Electoral Commission. We wanted to have a collective leadership. We had a spokesperson, Chuka, and we wanted to have a joint leadership. The Electoral Commission don't allow you to do that. The Electoral Commission also requires you to have a constitution, to have a treasurer, to have all kinds of organisational boxes that you have to tick, and a logo and a name. We made some mistakes. I personally was hoping that we would get 5 to 8% and win maybe 1 or 2 seats in the European elections, one in London perhaps and one in the southeast. We didn't manage that, and our vote was still 600,000 with no infrastructure, and it was therefore very difficult for us. Consequent to that, the party decided some members to split. Some decided they preferred to be simply independents. The rest of us, 5 of us, trying to bring together the One Nation Conservative and the Social Democratic Labour tradition, believe there is a place in British politics for a new, mainstream, centrist party that reflects that reality. And it's not solely the Liberal Democrats who can fill that space.
How many here have got Netflix? Yeah? A lot in the room. Imagine those in the room who've got Netflix, and I said to you, you have to decide for the next 5 years what you're going to be watching on Netflix. You'll be like, well, no, that's not the way the model works. It's on demand when I want it and if I want it. But our politics, apart from the past few years, that's what our politics gave us. Every 5 years, the way we as the public worked within politics is we went to the ballot paper box and ticked to our vote, and depending on what constituency we lived in was whether our vote actually counted or not. And we've seen movements really take off, and we've seen movements around Brexit, we've seen Trump and the Trump movement in America, but we've also seen movements like Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement. And you might say, well, all of these have got nothing in common, but they've all got two really important things in common. They have very clear mission and message, and they are led by people. There's a people movement behind it. But we also recognise there were some really good people working in politics who got into politics because they wanted to make a change. But the public perception was that everyone was filling their expenses, didn't care about the people, and did whatever the leaders told them to do. So our model tries to start to dismantle all of that. We help back candidates in general elections who share our values. And what do we mean by that? Well, the values that we stand for are open values. And what we do in election time is we help back where those candidates where we will make a difference. So often there's two candidates in a seat who share our values. We're not going to give those people money because let democracy take its path. Two decent people, let's see who gets elected. We want to make sure that we fight extreme politics. We say, okay, we'll back you with money and we'll back you with volunteers. In 2017, with only being 6 months old, we raised £500,000. We mobilised 2,000 volunteers. We backed 54 candidates, 36 of who were elected. But what we asked those candidates to do is pledge when they did get elected that they would commit to long-term cross-party working. We've got an established network of 60 MPs from 7 different parties, and come the upcoming general election that is weeks away, days away, depending on who you listen to, we plan to double the number of MPs that we support. Because if you had 140 MPs who all had agreed we share these values despite belonging to these different parties, that we are going to put country above party, then we will hold the balance of power in Parliament and we will stop the extremism that we see in politics today.
So we've heard 3 different approaches to changing politics in this country. So Zoe has talked about some of the models and common traits that we've seen from new political parties that have succeeded elsewhere. Mike has talked about the challenge of doing that within the UK system, and Tabitha has talked about a non-party based model. The issue that comes out of the research that Zoe has done is that it's not necessarily newness itself that matters, but the narrative that you have as a party, the leadership you have as a party, the structures you have as a party, and the techniques that you use. Now, all of those may in themselves be new, but they don't necessarily benefit from being a new party in itself. And indeed, being a new party, as Mike has clearly illustrated, comes with challenges itself. I wanted to include those comments because whilst our book and our topic is looking at new political movements, newness can clearly be based on an old model. And the old model brings many benefits in its way of infrastructure, of elected politicians, of name recognition. And if you can change the fundamentals identified in Zoe's book, then you can also build on the old. And the example of that is the Canadian Liberals. And the Canadian Liberals were a very old, well-established party with a recognised name in Trudeau, but who made themselves look new. I've had people holding up end signs, so we better end there. But thank you very much for your time.